So this is my third video about artificial intelligence and thinking about where artificial intelligence fits into the education system. And I started by looking at what artificial intelligence does and can do, and then looked at it primarily from the point of view of the author-student, the person who produces a piece of written work for whatever reason, for publication, for assessment, and what an author's responsibilities are. I want to look at this perhaps from a different perspective today, looking at it from the point of view of the teacher. And but only partly, because George Herbert Mead, I think, said that if you want to play football properly, if you want to be a good forward, you have to understand what the defenders are doing. And if you want to be a good defender, you have to understand what your opposing forwards are doing. You need to understand both sides of the game in order to play it effectively. And just as you need to be, if you want to be a good student, you have to understand what the teachers are looking for and what the teachers are after. So my starting point for today is I remember reading an essay, an article, a chapter in a book on deep learning and surface learning. And the argument was put forward that what we want to encourage is deep learning rather than surface learning. And the author made a point I think is interesting, which is that if you give a title, if you give an essay title to a student, the best students will be reading the title carefully in order to understand what to make out of it. The student who is surface learning will simply see it as an opportunity to write down everything that they know about the topic. So, for example, I think the example that was given was, imagine I set you an essay assignment and I say, write me a comparison of the psychology of child development of Piaget and compare it with Vygotsky. The poor student will take it as an opportunity to write down everything they know about Piaget and everything they know about Vygotsky and think that's the essay done. And the better student will say, I've got to compare the two, so let me pick out the key points that are relevant to a comparison between the two. If they don't directly compare, then I'll not be focusing on those points. So in that sense, reading the question is crucial. And from the point of view of the student, understanding that the title is set so that it's to encourage you to express your own opinions. It's to encourage you to engage with the work. It's active engagement that is of interest. I was listening to a talk only yesterday, and the speaker said that what they found was difficult for students was they could do the theoretical analysis, they could do the abstract reasoning properly, they could do the personal reflection up to a point, but when they brought the two together, it was clunky, was the word that was used. They don't fit together. Now, I'm actually looking for that. Let me say about the personal reflection. I don't mean for the person should just say, I think this or I think that. I think they should provide evidence, and there should be they should be drawing upon the literature to say what's already been demonstrated in the literature, to say what they want to do with that beyond the literature, what perspective they want to take on the literature. I want them to bring in the theory. But the theory is if I set an assignment which is all about theory, then I think I'm asking for trouble. If as a teacher I say, I want you to write about this particular aspect of education, want an essay on particular problems of education or a particular aspect, I'm asking for trouble in the sense that the student can go away, copy and paste from the internet an already prepared encyclopedia entry, blog entry. If somebody has already done a really good job of describing the educational philosophy of John Locke, why would I ask a student to do it again, and why would a student want to do it again? So what I'm interested in, take the philosophy of John Locke and tell me about an experience in your own life which is an example of that. Show me that you can relate the theory to your own life. That's the job that I think that the student should be being asked to do, to take the theory to take their life experience and to bring the two together so that the life experience provides examples, and the examples are always examples of something. So they're examples of theory being put into practice. And it's that is important to, in my view, that's where the originality of the student comes out, and that's what I'm looking for particularly. I guess AI can probably make up life experiences quite effectively as well, but it's more difficult and actually much better if the student is in conversation with the artificial intelligence, can tell it what life experiences are likely to have been part of their life. I mean, if a student writes about experiences in a part of the world you know they've never been to, or you suspect they've never been to, deeply suspicious. So my argument is this, that I know what I want. I want students to be able to engage with theory, and by theory I mean I expect them to draw upon a relevant number of sources, not a huge number. I'm not hugely ambitious in the range of theory that I expect students to come to terms with. They'll have some favourite theories that they'll be using, they'll have some life experience, and to bring the two together so that it's referenced according to academic standards, it's not just making claims that are unsupported, but it brings together an argument for why we should believe that the theory is useful in terms of their life experience. We're asking the student to make a case that they are in control of the theory and in control of managing and telling the story of their own experience. And what do I do when I set an assignment? I say, well, probably a 5,000 word essay, as though for publication, would be a good piece of work to do. Why do I choose that? Well, that's because I'm an academic and I have to write academic papers, and they're normally 5,000 to 8,000 words in length. I think it's difficult to write anything valuable in less than 4,000 words. I mean, people have done it, people do it, people do write life-changing tracts in less than 4,000 words, but you need to give yourself enough space to be able to develop a theme. So I choose 5,000 words normally as the kind of length of assignment that would be useful. drawing upon a number of papers, say perhaps 4 or 5 papers at most, and providing arguments and exemplifying the student's understanding from their life experience. Those are my criteria. And I say to the students, if you can meet those criteria in another way, a video, a poem, a painting, whatever it is, if you can meet the criteria in another way, go ahead and do it. And I'll let you into a secret, the students who choose to make a video always work twice as hard as the ones who actually just sit down and write the essay. So I'm gaining and they're gaining because they're engaging more fully with the learning, which is after all what I think most of us are interested in when we set assignments. So clear criteria for assessing, from my point of view, but also to engage the theory, to engage the students. We each of us have a different life experience. We have a life experience that depends on where we are, life experience that depends on the time when we were born. I've lived through experiences that my students haven't. I remember a time before there was computers, and they probably don't. Most of my students probably don't. So we have different life experiences, so we'll see and interpret the theories differently. And I think it's a mistake to say to the students, it's always seemed to me it's a mistake to say, you're being inducted into this body of theory, it's your job to fit into the theory. I think that what we ought to be saying to the students is, here's the theory, what do you want to make out of it? What do you want to do with it? Where do you want to take this study of education? Where would you take it? What is it that you want to change in the world that will make it different? Now, artificial intelligence will improve. Artificial intelligence will mimic more and more closely the things that I want students to do. But if the task is set out properly, if the task is presented to the students in an engaging way, then they will engage with it. I mean, nobody wants to pass through 3 years without learning anything, or 2 years of postgraduate study without learning anything. Most of the students are there for the bona fide reasons that they want to learn. They also want a qualification, of course, but that's ought to be secondary to the learning. We ought to be preparing the students for the life they will be living after they graduate, and that will be writing reports and summaries with a view to getting action taken. Nobody just wants to produce reports that don't improve the workplace where they work at all. So we need to be preparing students for their future, and part of that is about using artificial intelligence. So part of it is about getting them to engage with the tools that are available to us. The tools that were available to me when I was a postgraduate student were indexes on paper in libraries, and learning to use the British Education Index, to use the Social Sciences Citation Index, learning to use those. All of those was part of the bread and butter of learning to be a researcher. Those things are things of the past. They're the paper versions of those documents that I learned how to use have disappeared into history, and artificial intelligence is replacing them. And if that's to be used effectively, then we need to be thinking actively about what it is we're trying to get done. And if we have to change the way that we assess, change the way that the topics that we set for assessment, then we will have to do that. We need to find ways of bringing the skills that are needed for the student after graduation into the learning process in universities and in schools. And I have to say, I protect myself against the really good essays. If a student produced a 10,000 word essay that had convincing arguments for why I should change my life, I would give it a grade A and I would forget about it. I'm not sure that I'm ready to engage with my students' assignments to allow them to change my life. But if I'm not prepared to do that, then I think that the students perhaps have every reason for thinking I'm not serious about the work I'm doing, and maybe they will think that it's okay for them to copy and paste if I'm not going to, if they've become evangelical about a particular topic in education, if I'm not really listening to them, why should they bother? So I think we need to make sure that as teachers and as learners, we are concentrating on what's important. And what's important is developing our understandings, the understandings of all of us, to the best and fullest advantage.